There are two kinds of people in this world. Either you're doing things you know you shouldn't, or you're not doing things you know you should. Guess what? We're both. Hi, I'm Marcy Barker, life and business coach, aka your loving kick in the pants. This podcast is here to help you become accountable with aligned action and become boss-minded while growing a business without sacrificing what matters most. Let's dive in. Welcome to your loving kick in the pants. I'm excited to be here with you again for yet another week of taking action in your business and just growing in your abilities. And my husband and I have had a lot of conversations lately about even like, what's the purpose of life? Like, why are we trying to grow? Why are we trying to push ourselves? Why are we trying to level up? And I think there's a lot of beauty in stepping back and asking yourself that every once in a while of like, why am I doing this? Because I don't know about you guys, but it's really easy to forget why you're building everything when you're building it. And I've been listening to a lot of Dave Ramsey, and it's always like debt free, debt free, debt free. And I'm like, I could literally sell one of our houses and we'd be debt free plus some. But do I want to do that? Do I want to be debt free when the other side of the spectrum is like, no, there's actually a lot of good ways to utilize debt and you can make it work for you. And that's what my husband and I have been doing for a long time, is utilizing equity in our home and investing it. And, you know, we have an Airbnb that we turned into from our home. And so anyway, there's just lots of ways where you can step back and say, let's reevaluate what we're doing and let's make sure that we're continued in the right direction. Because I think that sometimes we get lost in the weeds and we're doing a lot, or you pick up the pace or you have new opportunities, and it can be easy to just rethink everything. But coming back to a place where you can evaluate what you're doing is a really important step in becoming boss-minded and really building a life that feels good. And so it was kind of weird because my husband is like, what are you thinking about? And I'm like, I'm thinking about, we could move back to Utah. And he's like, you're really thinking about that? And I was like, well, I'm thinking about being debt-free. But then I was like, oh yeah, snow. I'd have to go back to snow. And I don't want to do that. I literally don't want to do that. But of course, that's not the only drawback that would happen. And there's a lot of reasons. We just had to remind ourselves why we're doing this and all of the good things that have come from it. And I don't know, Aubrey and I make really big choices that maybe other people wouldn't make because they're not as, I don't know, risky is not even the right word. But we've done things that most people are like, nope, I could never do that. I'm not leaving Utah. I'm not leaving my family. I'm not gonna move my kids across the country, just all sorts of stuff. But Aubrey and I have a lot of really good experiences that shaped us in a really important way. But that brings me to the point of core memories. There are just times in your life where something happened and you're like, I'm always going to remember that, and it's always going to shape who I am and what I do. And in becoming boss-minded, the story that I want to talk about today is called Delegating with Purpose. And when I was writing my book and I decided to share this story, I was like, this is like kind of so silly that I remembered this and that it impacted me so much. And again, it just speaks to my ego and the way that I am and the way that I was. But delegation has been a really big piece of me growing my business. And if you're in business, you might be the person in your business who does everything. Or you might be the person in your business who you're tired and it's time for you to enlist some help. Or you might be a person in business where you're like, I really don't do that much in my business. I kind of collect my check. I make sure it works and I get to reap the rewards of what I've sown. So when it comes to delegating with purpose, I want you to know that it doesn't matter what stage of business you're in. There's always a way where you can enlist help and become a little bit more purposeful about what you're building and why you're building it. And just to take it back to the Airbnb experience or example, like we have somebody that manages our home and we're about to go back as a family. And she's like, do you want me to clean or do you guys want to clean while you're there? And I'm kind of like, why would I clean? Why would I clean when I'm there? When I'm already used to paying for my home to be cleaned after somebody stays in the house. And I'm like, doesn't matter that it's my own family staying in the house. And part of me too is like, yeah, we're in the house, we should clean up our mess. And I kind of want to tell my kids, like, hey, do you guys want to clean up and prep for the next guests? And you can make this money, because I was going to spend this money anyway. But delegating is all about understanding why you don't want to do it yourself, or why you're not the best person to do it, or why your strengths and talents should be spent somewhere else. So in this story, I talk about the core memory of what I learned about delegating and not doing everything myself. And it's kind of a silly story, but when I was in 8th grade or 7th grade, I ran for student body officer, and I won. I won the most votes by over 100. Like, I was student body president and vice president, the first vice president. I was over 100 votes ahead of her. So it was kind of like a clean sweep. And I didn't know that until the president before me shared with me the results, and I was like, okay, that's kind of a big deal. So when I was in 8th grade, I was getting ready for the school year, and a couple days before school started, I showed up to the school because we had an SBO meeting, and the advisor brought me into the classroom, and he's like, hey, our shirts are here. Do you want to open up the box of shirts while we wait for everybody? And I was like, yes. And I was so excited. And I was also excited because my 5 older siblings, they were all student body officers. So I was just excited to join the club and, get my shirt. And I opened up the box, and on the front of it, it said, Marcy, secretary. And I was like, what? I'm not the secretary. I'm the president. I'm the president. And I remember the advisor coming over, and he was like, they messed this up because only one person did it. They didn't have any teamwork. They didn't have anybody look over this. One person tried to do everything themselves. And I initially was like, that's probably actually why they got it messed up, because too many people were involved. Like, how many people does it take to really label shirts and embroider them correctly? And as I kept listening to my advisor, I was like, oh, he's actually trying to teach me a lesson about leadership, and that it's not all about one person doing everything right. But even if you're doing everything yourself, it is extremely important to get another set of eyes on your work. Or even in this business where we had these shirts made, I doubt the owner of the embroidery shop was the one who actually embroidered it and packed it up and shipped it out. I don't think that's how it happened. But it was just kind of funny, because this is one of the first things I learned about delegating, was that it actually is good to have another person in your corner or more people on the team to make sure that your work is correct and that things are happening how they need to go. So when we talk about delegating in leadership or delegating with a purpose, I put a few things in this book that can kind of help you troubleshoot why you might find it difficult to delegate. And for fun, I'll reference back that story, but I'll also reference, this upcoming decision, a very simple decision of do I want my property manager to clean the house, or should I spend my time and energy forcing my kids to clean, or helping them clean, or double checking their work, triple checking their work, who knows? But one of the beliefs that we have around delegating is that nobody else can meet your standards or do the work as well as you can. So if you don't believe that somebody's going to measure up, then you're just like, I'm just going to do it by myself, and that's going to be just fine. And I remember too, in my early days of being a mom, I remember hearing on a podcast that lazy moms are the ones who do everything themselves. And I was like, that's kind of backwards. They're definitely not lazy if they're doing everything themselves. But the purpose of that statement was that the moms who are doing everything themselves, they would rather just come in and do it themselves than to take the time to teach or to make sure that children or household standards are being met by everybody. So the barrier that might stop you from delegating with purpose is a fear of loss of quality. And I know I've had a few clients in the past, one particular, she was very much so up in arms every single day about controlling her kids and making sure they all got their chores done and making sure that everything was done all of the time. And she would get so frustrated because her kids wouldn't listen, or she'd have to nag them, or stuff wouldn't get done and she had to punish them. And when it came to growing a business, I'm like, hey, you can't do you cannot do it all. And in her place, her business model did not require a team. So she's like, I got to follow up. I got to message people. I got to make sure things are good. I got to post on social media. So there wasn't anything huge to delegate yet. And we realized that she had to start delegating in her home. And the lazy mom is the one that would be like, no, I'm just going to keep doing everything myself and I'll maybe get burnt out doing it. But this lesson for that particular client was she just feared that her kids wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it the same way that she thought it would be done. And over the course of our working together, it was really good because she learned how to let go, because she realized it was taking a toll on her, not just her physically and mentally, but it was taking a toll on her relationship with her children. So in the book, there's a few different points on what you can do to overcome that barrier. And one of those is teach your team to recognize successful results and the steps to get there. So this mom, this client, we recognize like really success in her home is not it being spotless, but success in her home is a happy place where she gets to talk to her kids without them clenching up that they're going to be told what to do yet again. Like she wanted to spend time with her kids without them being worried. So delegating with purpose, ask yourself if that's kind of your vibe. If people around you are kind of scared to even interact with you because you're just going to tell them what to do or how to do it better, and you don't really trust them to do it in a successful way. That doesn't mean exactly like you, but everybody's got to have their own version of what success looks like. So delegating with purpose, I think, is a really good thing that you have to step back and say, what am I doing with my life? Is what's most important here? Is it the quality of the outcome, or is it, to build healthy habits? Is it to communicate better? Is it to have less mistakes in business? Whatever it is. Hey, my beautiful people. If you're loving these episodes, you'll want the full experience. I've bundled both of my books, The Accountability Code and Becoming Boss Minded, into one powerful package. You'll get instant access to the audiobooks and ebooks so you can learn and grow anytime, anywhere. Head to bossminded.com and grab the book bundle now. It's the perfect way to stay inspired between episodes. All right, let's dive back in. Another barrier is lack of trust in others. And I think in my own 8th grade mind, this is probably something that I dealt with, is I just didn't think that people would follow through. I didn't think that anybody else was as excited as I was about fulfilling my student body officer responsibility. So I was like, I'll do it. And I just assumed that people would expect the president to do it, or people would want the president to do it. But I think that you have to recognize that in any situation, in any team growth, there's always got to be that room for each person to improve and progress in a way that works for them and works for the growth of the team. Because if only one person is growing, how is that helpful to anybody else? Like, everybody on the team has got to find a way to improve upon what they're already doing. So the belief in the barrier that you lack, the lack of trust in other people to do their job, the belief is that they won't take ownership or they won't follow through. And one of the solutions is to document progress and realign roles as needed. And there's a whole nother story in the book about tracking your progress. But I think that this has been really helpful in my life because, oh man, you guys know that I love documenting things and I love taking stats. I love writing things down because that helps me recognize truth and what really happened and what really happens. So if somebody says they're going to do something, a good way to actually track that is to document it. Document maybe what they said they were going to do, document the progress that happens, document the day that you want to check in and to see what worked or what didn't work. And I actually used to do this a lot with my kids because I thought that writing things down and giving them ownership in the agreement that they set up would be a really good way to check and see if they were doing it. And this is a really funny example. It's really stupid, actually. This just goes to show you how much I've grown as a mom. But when Layla was younger, Layla is 16 years old now, but when Layla was probably like, 4 or 5, I cannot tell you how many bowls of cereal she wasted. She would start eating cereal and then she would leave it on the table, and I just got so sick and tired of cleaning up soggy bowls of cereal. So I remember telling her, and I actually remember recording her, and I was like, remember you said that you were going to finish your bowl of cereal? And she's like, I will, I promise. And I said, I want you to make a video and record yourself saying that you're going to finish your cereal and what happens if you don't. And she made this video and she said, if I don't finish my bowl of cereal, then you don't let me have cereal for 1 whole month. And I said, okay, and that's fine. Let's see. And, you know, of course, as a mom, I know she's not going to finish it. But now being able to document what her idea was and her consequence was gave a new meaning to her learning what her expectations of following through would look like. So, of course, next time she wanted a bowl of cereal, we let her have one and she didn't finish. And I said, oh, bummer. You don't get cereal for a whole month. And, you know, of course, she throws a fit. And I said, no, remember, let's watch this video. And she watches herself and she's like, oh, man, I said that. I'm actually the one that said that. And I said, yep, so let's track. What's today? Okay, in 30 days when 1 month is up. I don't want you to ask me if you can have a bowl of cereal until you've looked at the calendar and you know that 30 days is up. And so for me, I didn't have to keep nagging my 5-year-old about, hey, finish a bowl. But it was more so we took the process forward and we said, okay, well, I can start to trust that you will listen about why you can't have a bowl of cereal. And Layla could start to trust herself about being able to, if you're going to take some food, then you need to finish it, or at least you need to take care of it so that other people aren't left with your mess. So when it comes to delegating with purpose, that might seem like a very simple thing. It almost seems like I didn't delegate anything, but at the same time, I delegated the responsibility of taking care of soggy cereal, or I took care of the responsibility of making sure people finish their food or they don't waste it in the first place. So I would like to tell you that that's not the last time we've ever had lessons around food. And my kids learning lessons about their habits and behaviors in the kitchen, especially as a mom taking care of everything. Like the lazy mom could skip all that work and just continue to take care of the bowls of cereal. But that's not me. I don't want to be that way. I also didn't like the dynamic it was creating every time I stepped in the kitchen to take care of my family. I also just didn't like wasting cereal. I was just like, you know, what good is pouring a bowl of cereal if it's just going to go to waste? So the last lesson in this story, the barrier is that identity is tied to work. And this is the example of wanting credit for everything that you've done. And so a lot of times we don't give up the responsibilities because we want to be the one to say that we did it, or we wanted to be the one to claim ownership. And a lot of times that's how you become burned out, is trying to do everything yourself. So I remember somebody congratulating me that I was showing up in social media and I was everywhere, and I just seemed to pop up in their feed all the time on every platform. And I realized, you know, I told her, like, yes, it's my content and that's me, but I've hired somebody to help me do that because social media can be really draining. And I've learned that asking for help in that area helped me relinquish this idea that I am tied to my hustle. And growing up in a family of 8 kids, we had to do everything ourselves, and a lot of times we only got attention because of what we did. And I am still learning how to not be tied up into my identity, tied to all the things that I'm doing. For example, like raising my prices and working with less clients, it's like that's a really amazing thing because I don't have to service 100 clients to be awesome. Like I can have an impact with up to 5 or 10 clients and still be like, no, this is actually really good. I don't need to be everywhere or be everything for everyone to feel good about it. So the belief with this barrier that your identity is tied to work, sometimes it makes things harder. This barrier that your identity is tied to work is also tied to the belief that your worth is based on doing everything yourself. And guess what the solution is? Rest. Your solution is rest and to reassess what you're doing. And resting almost seems like, no, I can't rest because I got to get everything done. But really, overcoming a barrier is learning how to adjust it and to really see it for what it's worth so that you can change it to be more effective. So one of the solutions for this is to ask yourself a question. And in the book, there's 4 different questions you can ask yourself. But one of them is, why do I struggle to define who I am outside of my business success. And this one was a really impactful learning experience for me, because if I am known as a business coach, or I'm known as an author, or I'm known as these big things that I'm doing, I have to understand that it's okay to be known outside of those things. It's okay to be known as Aubrey's wife. It's okay to be known as a mom. It's okay to be known as the friend at Bunko or the friend at church. And when you realize that you have worth in other places that are separate from hustle, it helps you recognize that hustle is really one of the last things people care about you for. Like, it might be something that has defined you in one aspect or another, but the people who truly love you, they're going to love you no matter if you're working hard or you need a break or you're intentionally resting. So as you are learning to delegate with purpose in your own business, I hope that you recognize that there are solutions. You don't have to continue to do everything yourself, and you don't have to break down your entire business and restructure everything at once. You can really pinpoint the things that are stopping you from delegating, and there's a way to overcome them so that life is just a little bit more easy and it's more peaceful. So again, back to my property manager who was like, do you want to clean or do you want me to plan it into my schedule? And you know what I did? I asked her, I said, can I let you know later? I said, can I let you know later? And what I am finding successful about that is that I'm learning to really ask all the questions and to define what's most important to me. And that is because I want to reduce how much resentment I feel or how much work I'm doing. Or maybe I just need to look at the numbers and be like, is a cleaning fee that big of a deal? Or is it going to be better for me to rest and relax with my family? Or maybe on the flight to the house, I see how willing my kids are to do their part, and maybe them cleaning the house is something that I need to take the time to say, hey, we're gonna have a learning lesson here, and it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm willing to go over your work, but you guys do have to do your part here, because we booked out our home instead of renting it out, or whatever it may be. But delegating with purpose is definitely something that's going to help you level up in your life, and it's going to help you definitely feel more tied to the process of becoming boss-minded. And that's a really happy place to be, because you don't have to reach the finish line to find success, and you don't have to be at the end game to know that what you're doing now is worth it. All right, I'll see you next week for another episode of Your Loving Kick in the Pants. I wish you luck, and I love you all. Thanks for tuning in, friend. If this episode gave you value, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with someone in your circle who's ready to wake up, show up, and grow their business without sacrificing what matters most. When you do, you're not just helping them, you're building your network of like-minded leaders. And I'll say this plainly, leaving a kind review matters more than you know. It helps more people find the show, and it keeps the momentum going. So pause for a moment and please drop that review. Lastly, if there's a topic you want me to cover, I want to hear from you. Reach out, because this podcast is for you and I'm here to serve. Until next time, stay boss-minded.